The Week 6 edition of Picking Every Game on the college football schedule is highlighted by Miami's trip to Florida State in an intriguing rivalry game that could have huge implications in recruiting in the state of Florida. Elsewhere, NC State looks to remain undefeated in the ACC when Louisville visits Raleigh. Florida hosts reeling LSU. Washington State makes the trip to Eugene to play Oregon, and Alabama heads to Texas A&M searching for its third straight dominating win. Here's every game on the Week 6 slate. Thursday, October 5th, Louisville at NC State. NC State has bounced back from its loss to South Carolina by winning 4 straight, including the last 2 versus ACC opponents. A potentially huge home date with Clemson is looming in early November, but that will only be significant if the Pack can get by Louisville, very possible, and Pittsburgh, very likely. NC State 28, Louisville 24. Friday, October 6th, Memphis at UConn. UConn is 0-3 against FBS opponents and has given up at least 38 points in all 3 games. Memphis was humbled Saturday in Orlando, losing 40-13 to surging UCF. The Tigers still might end up being the best team in the AAC West, but they are having significant issues on defense. Memphis 41, UConn 27. Boise State at BYU. Are we witnessing bias slide into irrelevance? The Cougars are a shocking 1-4. The one win was over Portland State, and the offense has scored a total of 43 points in the 4 losses. The schedule softens up in the second half of the season, but BYU could be headed to its first losing season since 2004. Boise State 30, BYU 10. Saturday, October 7th, Eastern Michigan at Toledo. Eastern Michigan came a few plays away from picking up its second road win of the season against a Power 5 conference opponent. The Eagles, who beat Rutgers 16-13 in Week 2, lost at Kentucky 24-20. This trip to Toledo will be a huge test. The Rockets are 3-1 overall and once again feature one of the MAC's top offenses. Toledo 38, Eastern Michigan 30. Illinois at Iowa. Iowa is 0-2 in the Big Ten, but the Hawkeyes are embarking on a stretch of 3 very winnable games. Illinois at Northwestern, Minnesota. Illinois is fresh off a 28-6 loss at home to Nebraska. This is a must-win for Iowa. Iowa 31, Illinois 10. Iowa State at Oklahoma. After scoring at least 40 points in its first 3 games, Iowa State was shut down by the Texas defense in last Thursday's 17-7 loss to the Longhorns. The trip to Norman will be difficult. Oklahoma 38, Iowa State 14. Ole Miss at Auburn. Ole Miss returns to the state of Alabama 1 week after its 66-3 loss at Alabama. The Rebels, who beat the Tide on their last trip to Tuscaloosa, were outgained 613-253 and failed to convert a third down. The score won't be as lopsided this week, but the result will be the same. Auburn 31, Ole Miss 17. Penn State at Northwestern. Penn State showed there would be no hangover from the emotional win at Iowa by jumping to a 28-0 lead in the first quarter against Indiana on Saturday afternoon. I would expect a similar focus from the Nittany Lions in Evanston. Penn State 30, Northwestern 14. Temple at East Carolina. East Carolina has given up a total of 34 touchdowns and is allowing a staggering 50.6 points through 5 games. Temple has scored only 8 touchdowns and ranks 120th nationally with 16.2 points per game. East Carolina 34, Temple 30. Texas Tech at Kansas. Texas Tech lost for the first time in 2017 but proved once again, in a 41-34 loss to Oklahoma State, that it is much improved in Cliff Kingsbury's 5th season. Kansas has shown progress on offense this fall. The Jayhawks have scored 27 points or more in all 4 games, but continues to struggle mightily on defense. Texas Tech 44, Kansas 30. Georgia at Vanderbilt. Georgia has built one of the finest resumes in the nation through the first month of the season. The Bulldogs have been dominant on defense, giving up a total of 3 points in their 2 SEC games. Vanderbilt showed some signs of life at Florida after its 59-0 loss at Alabama 2 weeks ago, but the Commodores were unable to get enough stops in the second half to win in Gainesville. Georgia 30, Vanderbilt 14. Wake Forest at Clemson. The nation's leader in tackles for a loss will be on display at Clemson this Saturday, and it will be wearing black and gold or white. Wake Forest leads college football with 50 TFLs after recording 17 in Saturday's loss to Florida State. Clemson is tied for 8th in the category, with 40 through 5 games. Clemson 30, Wake Forest 13. Duke at Virginia. Virginia hasn't played since its impressive 42-23 win at Boise State on September 22. It was by far the Cavs' most significant win of the Bronco Mendenhall era. Duke's offense sputtered for the first time this season in its 31-6 loss to Miami, Florida on Friday night. The Blue Devils will be eager to bounce back. Duke 28, Virginia 27, Pittsburgh at Syracuse. These two teams combined for 137 points last year, a 76-61 Pittsburgh win, in what remains the highest-scoring FBS game ever played. Both defenses remain suspect. Syracuse has the better offense. Syracuse 38, Pittsburgh 30. Central Michigan at Ohio. Ohio started its pursuit of a MAC East title with a win at Eastern Michigan 2 weeks ago. Central Michigan is the only significant hurdle for the Bobcats before an October 31 date with division favorite Miami. Ohio 27, Central Michigan 24. Bowling Green at Miami. Ohio. Bowling Green is one of 7 winless teams in the nation, and looking down the schedule, it's hard to find a win for the Falcons, maybe at Kent State. Miami 38, Bowling Green 10. FIU at Middle Tennessee. Middle Tennessee has found life difficult without starting quarterback Brent Stockstill and wideout Richie James. The Blue Raiders should be able to get past FIU at home without their dynamic duo, but they need to get healthy if they want to be a factor in the CUSA East race. Middle Tennessee 24, FIU 17. Ulm at Texas State. The level of competition hasn't been great, but the Ulm offense has been on a roll. The Warhawks have scored a total of 107 points in the last 2 weeks in wins over Louisiana and Coastal Carolina. Texas State hasn't scored more than 14 points against an FBS team this season. Ulm 38, Texas State 17. Air Force at Navy. Here's a shocking development. Navy had to replace a bunch of starters but is somehow finding a way to be really good again. The midshipmen improved to 4-0 with a come-from-behind 31-21 win at Tulsa on Saturday. Air Force is a disappointing 1-3, but the schedule has been tough. The losses are to Michigan and San Diego State, 2 ranked teams, as well as at New Mexico. Navy 37, Air Force 24. Ball State at Akron. Akron beat an FBS team for the first time this season, topping Bowling Green 34-23 on Saturday. The Zips should make it 2 straight this week when Ball State comes to town. The Cardinals have been outscored 88-24 the last 2 weeks. Akron 38, Ball State 23. Charleston Southern at Indiana. Indiana coach Tom Allen announced earlier this week that redshirt freshman Peyton Ramsey will be the Hoosiers' starting quarterback. He unseats senior Richard Lago. Indiana 47, Charleston Southern 10. Kent State at Northern Illinois. After playing 2 Power 5 teams, Boston College, Nebraska and a ranked San Diego State team among the first 4 games of the season, in Northern Illinois should NT have to break a sweat at its league opener against Kent State. Northern Illinois 30, Kent State 7. LSU at Florida. These are trying times at LSU, where the Tigers are attempting to sort through the wreckage of an inexplicable 24-21 loss at home to Troy. Ed Orgeron announced on Monday that Danny Etling will remain the starting quarterback, but it would be a bit of a surprise if the job isn't handed to freshman Miles Brennan later in the season. Florida, meanwhile, continues to find ways to win. The Gators are 3-0 after a 38-24 win over Vanderbilt, their 3rd straight over in SEC foe to start the league slate. Florida 28, LSU 20. Miami, Florida at Florida State. The Hurricanes, fresh off of a dominating win at Duke, are a 3-point favorite in Tallahassee, a statement of both how far this program has come in a short time under Mark Richt and how much Florida State has failed to live up to lofty preseason expectations. Miami 17, Florida State 14. Minnesota at Purdue. Minnesota lost for the first time in the PJ Fleck era, dropping a 31-24 decision to Maryland at home. Now, the Gophers must visit a Purdue team that has had a week off after its competitive loss to Michigan. This is a big game for 2 teams jockeying for position in the Big Ten West. Purdue 30, Minnesota 24. Notre Dame at North Carolina. North Carolina went a combined 13-3 in the ACC the past 2 seasons. The Tar Heels are 0-3 in the league this season and just 1-4 overall. Notre Dame is quietly off to an impressive 4-1 start, with the only loss to Georgia by 1 point at home. The Fighting Irish have been extremely potent on the ground. Notre Dame 31, North Carolina 14. New Mexico State at Appalachian State. Appalachian State returns to action for the first time since a painful 1-point loss at home to Wake Forest. This visit from New Mexico State will not be easy. The Aggies have a win at New Mexico on their resume, and they played well in their Sun Belt opener against Troy 27-24 loss. Appalachian State 24, New Mexico State 21. Western Michigan at Buffalo. Western Michigan is off the national radar this season, but the Broncos appear to be poised for another run at the MAC West title. They followed up 2 competitive losses against Power 5 teams USC, Michigan State with wins over Idaho, Wagner and Ball State. Buffalo is improved but WMU is the better team. Western Michigan 31, Buffalo 17. West Virginia at TCU. We'll see how TCU handles the spotlight as a top 10 team following its big win at Oklahoma State 2 weeks ago. West Virginia is also coming off a bye. The Mountaineers have scored at least 56 points in 3 straight games, but they did give up 564 total yards, 367 on the ground in a 22-point win over Kansas 2 weeks ago. TCU 41, West Virginia 30. Arkansas at South Carolina. South Carolina was riding high after 2 games, wins over NC State and Missouri. Now, 3 weeks later, things don't look so promising for Will Muschamp's second season. The Gamecocks have lost 2 of 3, with the only win by 1 point over Louisiana Tech at home. Arkansas is still an unknown commodity. The locals aren't very pleased with the program now, but they are a play away versus Texas A&M from being 3-1, with the only loss to a top 10 team TCU at home. Arkansas 28, South Carolina 24. Louisiana Tech at UAB. Louisiana Tech is 3-0 versus teams not in the SEC. UAB is not in the SEC. Louisiana Tech 41, UAB 10. Maryland at Ohio State. Maryland improved to 2-0 in true road games, knocking off Minnesota on a late touchdown run by Ty Johnson. The Terps will have a tough time making 3-0. The schedule hasn't been tough, but Ohio State seems to be figuring things out on defense since its 31-16 loss to Oklahoma. The Buckeyes have averaged 8.5, 7.9 and 9.2 yards per game in wins over Army, UNLV and Rutgers. Ohio State 35, Maryland 14. Oregon State at USC. Oregon State is emerging as one of the worst Power 5 teams in the nation in 2017. It's a significant step back for a program that appeared to be headed in the right direction. The Trojans should have no trouble bouncing back from last week's loss in Pullman. USC 41, Oregon State 7. Tulsa at Tulane. This nugget comes from at Fifth Wave blog. Tulane is favored in back-to-back games against FBS teams for the first time since 2013. Fritzmas. Tulane 27, Tulsa 24. Colorado State at Utah State. Utah State has won its last 2 games by a combined score of 101-34, including a 40-24 victory over in-state rival BYU. It's still doubtful this team can be a factor in the Mountain West Mountain Division race, but at least the Aggies are showing signs of life. Colorado State 38, Utah State 21. Louisiana at Idaho. There seem to be some issues on defense for Louisiana. The Ragin' Cajuns are last in the nation in scoring defense, 53.8 PPG, and 128th in total defense, 563.5 YPG. Those are horrifying numbers for a program that has been to a bowl game in 5 of the last 6 seasons. Idaho 54, Louisiana 38. FAU at Old Dominion. Lane Kiffin recorded his first win over an FBS opponent as the head coach at FAU as the Owls topped Middle Tennessee 38-20 on Saturday. The Owls are a slight favorite, 3.5 points to make it 2 straight this weekend against Old Dominion. They'll go with the underdog Monarchs at home. Old Dominion 34, FAU 30. Marshall at Charlotte. Marshall has already reached its win total 3 from last season, and the Herd's lone loss was on the road versus NC State. This team could be a real factor in what looks to be a wide-open CUSA East race. Marshall 37, Charlotte 13. Army at Rice. The struggles continue at Rice, which has scored 10 points or fewer in 4 of its first 5 games. Army ranks 3rd nationally in rushing, averaging 363.6 yards per game. In a related note, the Black Knights have completed a total of 7 passes. Army 31, Rice 17. Georgia State at Coastal Carolina. Here's one interesting note about games involving Coastal Carolina. Teams are efficient in the red zone. CCU and its opponents have scored on a combined 30 of 32 trips inside the 20-yard line. Coastal Carolina 33, Georgia State 30. Kansas State at Texas. Texas opened Big 12 play with a nice win at Iowa State last Thursday night. The Longhorns' defense limited ISU to 256 total yards, including only 10 yards rushing. Kansas State does most of its work on the ground, led by quarterback Jesse Ertz and a nice collection of tailbacks. This is an intriguing game that will give us a good indication where each team is on the Big 12 food chain. Texas 17, Kansas State 13. SMU at Houston. SMU and Houston both hired up-and-coming assistant coaches to take over their respective programs following the 2014 season. Tom Herman at Houston inherited a roster stocked with talent, and the results were predictable. He won immediately. Chad Morris, on the other hand, inherited a significant rebuild, and the results were predictable. He struggled to win games. Now, 4 years later, Herman is at Texas and Morris appears to be on the verge of a breakthrough season at SMU. Do you know what could expedite the rebuild? A win over Houston. SMU 30, Houston 28. Southern Miss at UTSA. With each week, Frank Wilson's stock continues to rise at UTSA. The Roadrunners are 3-0 overall, with 2 of the wins coming on the road. This is a team that has a chance to be 11-0 when it visits Louisiana Tech in late November. UTSA 31, Southern Miss 24. Alabama at Texas A&M. There are a bunch of amazing stats that detail just how dominant Alabama has been the last 2 weeks. This might be my favorite. Alabama scored more touchdowns 17 against Vanderbilt and Ole Miss than first downs allowed 14. This team will attempt to play a near-flawless game for the 3rd straight week. Alabama 38, Texas A&M 14. Virginia Tech at Boston College. Virginia Tech's challenge this week bounced back emotionally from last Saturday night's loss to Clemson. Just 2 weeks ago, Boston College was tied with Clemson at Clemson 7-7 heading into the 4th quarter. This is not a gimme. Virginia Tech 24, Boston College 14. Fresno State at San Jose State. It's a battle between 2 first-year coaches in the Mountain West, Jeff Tedford at Fresno State and Brent Brennan at San Jose State. Fresno State is 2-2. San Jose State is already 1-5. Fresno State 41, San Jose State 17. Michigan State at Michigan. John O'Korn will be making the start at quarterback for Michigan, which has managed to score at least 28 points in every game despite its relative struggles on offense. Michigan State is hitting the road for the first time after opening the season with 3 wins in a 4-game homestand. The Spartans might not challenge for the Big Ten East title, but this looks like an improved team that should win 8 games in the regular season. Michigan 28, Michigan State 24. Missouri at Kentucky. Kentucky has a habit of playing to the level of its competition, which could be a bad thing with Missouri coming to town. The Tigers are 1-3 against FBS opponents with an average margin of defeat of 32.3 points. And in its one win, Missouri gave up 43 points to Missouri State, which has scored a total of 48 points in its other 5 games, all against FCS teams. Kentucky 34, Missouri 13. Arizona at Colorado. Colorado has followed up its surprising Pac-12 South title season, in which it went 8-1 in the regular season, with an 0-2 start. In league games, there's no shame in losing to Washington or at UCLA, but it's clear now that the Buffs will take a big step back in 2017 after losing so many key pieces on defense. The schedule lightens up a bit over the next weeks before a challenging trip to Washington State. Colorado 31, Arizona 17. UCF at Cincinnati. UCF is making a strong case as the best group of 5 team in the nation in 2017. The Knights are 3-0, with dominating wins over FIU, Maryland, which beat Texas, and Memphis, which beat UCLA. Cincinnati, on the other hand, has underwhelmed in Luke Fickell's debut. UCF 41, Cincinnati 18. Washington State at Oregon. How's this for a lack of respect? Washington State, undefeated after beating USC last weekend, is an underdog on the road to an Oregon team that will be without its starting quarterback. Washington State 34, Oregon 30. Wisconsin at Nebraska. Wisconsin, already 4-0, could be 10-0 when it hosts Michigan on November 18, if it can survive this potential speed bump at Nebraska. The Cornhuskers are 2-0 in the Big Ten, but it could be the softest 2-0 in the history of the Big Ten, wins over Rutgers and Illinois. We need to see Tanner Lee play mistake-free against a good team before we start believing in the Huskers. Wisconsin 27, Nebraska 17. Western Kentucky at UTEP. In an unlikely turn of events, Mike Price is back on the sidelines at UTEP as the Miners' interim coach following the resignation of Sean Kugler. Not sure it matters who is coaching this team. UTEP is bad. Western Kentucky 38, UTEP 20. Stanford at Utah. Stanford running back Bryce Love leads the nation in rushing by 265 yards despite ranking 13th in average carries per game. He is averaging an astounding 11.1 yards per carry and 217.6 yards per game. Heisman voters will be forced to take notice if he maintains this pace. Stanford 27, Utah 20. Hawaii at Nevada. Jay Norvell is still searching for his first win as a head coach. If it doesn't come this week against Hawaii, the next best opportunity won't be until November 11 when San Jose State comes to Reno. Hawaii 37, Nevada 30. California at Washington. After a surprisingly competitive game at Rutgers in Week 1, Washington has shifted into cruise control with 4 straight lopsided wins. Cal has been scrappy in the first season of the Justin Wilcox era, but the Bears don't have the talent to beat Washington, especially in Seattle. Washington 37, California 17. San Diego State at UNLV. San Diego State is mastering the art of the close win. The Aztecs have defeated Stanford by 3, Air Force by 4 and Northern Illinois by 6 in the past 3 weeks. This trip to UNLV should end be as stressful. San Diego State 34, UNLV 20.